A bombing in Turkey, an airshow tragedy, and the Dems have control of the Senate, at least for now. So much happening around the U.S. and the world. And here to talk about it is our foreign affairs correspondent, Lisa Daftari, who joins me from Los Angeles. Lisa, so great to have you back on again.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So in the U.S. itself, of course, so much happening. Veterans Day over the weekend, so many ceremonies, including an air show in Dallas, where unfortunately there was a tragic accident. So two planes collided midair. Lisa, do you have any more details on that?
Yes, this appears to be, as you said, a commemoration of Veterans Day. Many people in attendance being either, serving in City Hall or being just residents of the town or veterans. And these were two vintage aircrafts from World War II that happened to collide during this show, leaving 6 people dead, including 2 of the city council members who actually knew how to fly planes. Um, Horrific. I mean, if you see some of this footage with the fiery, the optics of it are just awful to have, this very symbolic event for Veterans Day and to have it end in such tragedy. Very, very small hometown with so many people in attendance who, know these people, love them, support them, and came out to just, celebrate the day together.
Absolutely. It just gives me chills, just the thought of it. Never mind just watching that video. It's absolutely awful. Okay, so another explosion, unfortunately, in the world happened in Istanbul, Turkey. Lisa, what happened there?
This is a very busy area where restaurants and shops line the streets. A suicide kind of bomber was carrying a bomb that went off in a very busy area, also leaving, I think 6 is the latest number in terms of casualties, if I have that correct. But Erdogan came out and said we were going to find the perpetrators and their networks and punish them. This is unfortunately just another day in the Middle East. We always connect the dots here, and although we don't know who the perpetrator was at this point or which, or if they belong to any group or if he or she were connected to a one-off, what we call a kind of a lone wolf. Regardless, we connect the dots back to the number one world sponsor of terrorism, which is the Iran regime, currently under scrutiny for the people coming out in Iran over 60 days now, on the streets telling the world that they want regime change, they want freedoms, they want basic freedoms, and that their government is not suited to rule them, and that they do put a lot of their money in global terror. And when we see attacks like this around the world, that's exactly what should come to mind, whether it's in Gaza or the West Bank, in Israel, in Lebanon, in Yemen, Iraq, Turkey, elsewhere. The number one sponsor of terrorism is the Iran regime. And again, we're not sure yet if this in fact this explosion was connected to that. But in fact, if we do want to stop global terrorism, it's an important world event to look at right now. This movement inside Iran and the potential, perhaps, to change the regime in Iran.
Okay, so yeah, you definitely brought up a sore point there. I know for you specifically, Iran, the Middle East. So speaking of the Middle East, amidst ongoing those bloody crackdowns that have been happening by the Islamic Republic of Iran against protesters on the street. So the State Department spokesperson, Ned Price, I guess in a media briefing Thursday, incorrectly characterized the Iranian demonstrators movement as one merely seeking reforms from the Islamic Republic instead of calling it a quest for democracy or a revolution, right? So, Lisa, what's your reaction to that?
Right. I mean, this was very disappointing, right? So somebody in that position knows better, knows the history, and knows that the Iranian people have done so much to define this movement as one for regime change and not merely one for reform. The Iranian people believe that this government is beyond reform. There's no way that terrorists who are butchering young people, young women on the streets of Iran, have any potential for reform or change, and they just want this government gone. And they have done everything to prove that to us, to show that to us, to demonstrate it, whether it's in their chants or in their signs or in their videos. The message is clear. For the State Department to come out and say that, they're almost whitewashing the movement, kind of trying to move it back a drop and say, we kind of want to make nice with the government for maybe a nuclear deal further down the line. So it looks like they're not fully supporting the Iranian people, that they're still leaving kind of daylight between themselves and the protesters in order to have this kind of a possibility for some sort of negotiation with the Iran regime, and therefore they come out with this kind of terminology. So lo and behold, on social media, we saw this uproar by activists, by political commentators, by Iranians inside Iran, outside Iran, saying, wait a minute, this is a revolution. We're asking for regime change. It's not about reform. Take that word out of your vocabularies. And again, this is more of the same. We saw this under the Obama administration, who did not support the 2009 Green movement and instead wanted to hold out to have the JCPOA in 2015, which was the Iran nuclear deal. But we're seeing more of the same under the Biden administration, and the Iranian people and the expats and the experts are saying, no more of this. We want you to call it a revolution.
Mm-hmm. And Lisa, there are reports that the Iran-backed Hamas terror group is investing in its cyber espionage capabilities. What's happening?
Yeah, it's a great point to make, Jeannette, to connect all these dots. Again, more of the Iranian people's money going into supporting a terror group, Hamas, that operates in the West Bank, that seeks only to destroy Israel and to kill Jews. And here you have the Iranian people's money going towards this terrorism. Inside Iran, the economy is abysmal. You cannot afford basic pharmaceutical supplies, medical supplies, meat, eggs, milk. Everything is inflated, and it's very difficult to afford these basic needs. But then you see the government pouring these billions of dollars into these terror organizations. And here you have a new development that Hamas is beefing up its cyber capabilities. That takes money, right? So they are absolutely working on expanding that arm of their cyber army, and will unleash these attacks globally, especially towards Israel and the United States.
Mm-hmm. And then, Lisa, turning our attention to the political front in the U.S., of course, holding its midterms last week. It seemed to take forever to count some of these votes, but it looks like now the Democrats may have control over the Senate. So how will this look in the U.S.? Will it change anything?
Yeah, it's a good question. There were a lot of predictions that there was going to be this so-called red wave, meaning that people have had enough of the Democrats, whether it's locally with the level of crime in U.S. cities, the inflation nationally, the price of gas and groceries, jobs, etc. And that was the prediction, that people have had enough and they're going to move aside and move, vote beyond their political parties to vote for either independent or Republican candidates, red candidates. And that, in fact, did not pan out the way that they predicted. A lot of Democrats were reelected to their positions. The Republicans were not able to unseat them, despite their abysmal records, despite the reports that many people were fed up with the status quo. And we had also heard that a lot of moms, angry moms, were going to come out because they were fed up with the way that the school boards and the government handled COVID, in terms of school closures and vaccines and things like that. So despite all of this disenchantment inside the United States, it looks like people didn't vote that way. With regards to your question, I don't think either the House of Representatives or the Senate will have a large margin on either side. So I think both are pretty much going to be even down the center. Maybe you'll have a small advantage for the Republicans in the House when all these votes are counted. Who knows, by the end of March, perhaps. And in the Senate, you have a small majority going to the Democrats. Yes, of course, this matters because one vote is a majority, and that's the way things can go. And regardless, you have the vice president making the tiebreaker in the Senate anyway. So, I mean, perhaps this is a wake-up call for both parties moving towards 2024, where the country just needs a change, and perhaps what the status quo in either party is not delivering that change to the American people, whether it's about schools or about COVID or about the economy, and so many other things. I think both parties need to bring fresh blood into the circulation and seeing, what they can offer the American people that will resonate with them come 2024.
And of course, in the U.S., on many Americans' minds is that of crime and also gun control. And Lisa, we're seeing that a report is finding that for the 39th month in a row, over 1 million guns a month are being sold in the U.S. That's staggering.
Isn't that tremendous? Yes, these are tremendous numbers, and it only indicates one thing, that people are still fearful for their lives, for robberies, crime, etc. This number, the fact that this is the 39th month consecutively that there have been such high gun sales in the United States, is based on the registry. So these are legal gun purchases, of course, and when we hear about gun crime, those are usually illegal, gun possession. So that's something important to point out. And I think a lot of people kind of are like, oh no, we have to have gun control. Well, there's a reason why people are using their Second Amendment rights here in the United States, and that's because of the crime. So for those people who want to vote for gun control, first vote for, leaders that will do away with the crime so that people don't feel like they have to run out and buy a gun. And that's exactly what it is. I think, here in Los Angeles, in New York, in Chicago, in a lot of places where home invasions have been on the rise, a lot of people are rushing to buy guns, especially in the post-COVID world, the post-pandemic world, where we saw this exponential rise in crime. A lot of people are rushing to buy guns and to protect themselves that way.
What a world we are living in. All right. So, Lisa, the U.S. has been facing a major border crisis as millions of undocumented immigrants are pouring over the southern border. So now the Justice Department has awarded a $41 million in contracts to a nonprofit organization to help immigrants fight deportation. So what can you tell us about this?
Think about that. We have illegal immigration on our borders. We have fentanyl coming in and killing our young people. We have terrorists that are using this opportunity of a vulnerable border to come in. And we have no way of vetting these people. We have no way of absorbing these people. We're putting them up in hotels. We're giving many of them one-way tickets to the city of their choice. We're giving them cell phones in many cases. These are all reports that we have done at the Foreign Desk over the last couple of years. And they continue to pour into the country in record numbers under the Biden administration. Now, the same Biden administration that does not have the resources to control the masses is putting money towards fighting their deportation, meaning supporting their staying in the United States when we cannot support them, we don't have the funds to do so. So homelessness is a huge crisis here in the United States, in our large cities. Crime, huge problem. Fentanyl, huge problem. We don't have the resources. We're not doing the right thing by, allowing more people in when we can't control them. They're going to perhaps end up on the streets if they are not, absorbed properly into society. And here we go. They are putting money towards fighting their deportation so that they can fight the government using government money.
Right. And then on top of that, Lisa, we're hearing that the Department of Homeland Security is not deporting violent, criminal, illegal aliens. Why not?
That's a great question. Why not? Because it goes against their liberal ideology. They feel great about themselves when they sleep at night, believing that they are letting everybody into this country and letting violent criminals loose. We have a problem with this, the criminal justice system as is. I know here in Los Angeles or in New York, you commit a crime of stealing under $1,000. They don't even arrest you. They don't even the cops don't even show up. People can do robberies. I mean, they hold guns to innocent shopkeepers and hold them up at gunpoint, and they are let go. It's horrific. And now you have illegal immigrants who are criminals, and even they're not getting deported out of the country. So it's mind-boggling. Obviously, this is attributing to a lot of the crime out there. And the rate of repeat offenders is exponential right now. That is what's very, very horrific, because these criminals are seeing that there are not consequences. They're back on the streets committing more crime. So when, for example, here in Los Angeles, you see many times when somebody is finally arrested for murder or stabbing or a very, very horrific robbery of sorts with guns and so on. It turns out that they have a record. This is their 5th time, 6th time, 7th time getting into trouble or committing a crime and being let go. And therefore you have this repeat criminal record. I don't know. I don't know when it's going to change. We were hoping that this election would at least be a referendum, that the people would speak and say, "Look, we need change," and then the politicians would be forced to really take a look at what they're doing and their policies. But when they're getting voted back into office, they're now lame ducks. They are now comfortable in their positions. We're just going to have more of the same, and this will be, continue to be the jungle that it is, where people are getting robbed, in broad daylight in Beverly Hills when they're trying to have lunch. So, that's the way we're headed. And of course, these policies, Jeannette, that we're talking about today are obviously adding to that fire.
Absolutely. And Lisa, U.S. President Joe Biden overseas in Asia, and he and the Chinese leader are to meet face-to-face Monday for the first time since he took office. So I guess the U.S. concerns over Taiwan, Russia's war in Ukraine, and North Korea's nuclear ambitions are on the top of his agenda. Lisa, this should be an interesting conversation, to say the least.
Yeah, so many people are upset that the conversation which took place this morning did not include anything about COVID. There wasn't any push on fentanyl or the Uyghurs or any of those important topics, but it was mostly, the takeaway was Joe Biden saying, I don't think that the Chinese are going to invade Taiwan anytime soon, and they understand what the U.S. position is on that. So many believe this was a lost opportunity to discuss and ask and really press on important things, that the Chinese are getting away with globally, but they walked away with this, pat on the back for Joe Biden because he kind of understood what he said is he believed that the Chinese leader also understood that the U.S. has a position on not wanting China to invade Taiwan.
It looks like we are out of time here, but Lisa, thanks so much for joining us again today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Lisa Daftari is of the Foreign Desk, joining me from Los Angeles.